So I got my start as a bike lawyer representing thousands of New York City cyclists who were being subject to a crackdown by NYPD, which is trying to shut down group cycling in the city. This is back in 2004, and while the police were focused on critical mass primarily, the rules that they enacted and that I was opposing as a lawyer would have affected all kinds of group cycling activity, even large families. Any group of cyclists, 10 or more, would have been required to get a permit from the police before they could go out and ride together, or even walk together. It was absolutely preposterous. And when you think about how group running has become such a huge phenomenon here in New York City, the NYPD parade rules that tried to limit any group of 10 or more to proceeding together unless they had advance permission from the police. Obviously, it's a non-starter, and obviously it would be enforced on a selective basis only against those groups the NYPD were trying to shut down, not every group of 10. But one of the things that was so fascinating to me in the course of that litigation was learning how police view traffic in the streets. And from the perspective of police, what I learned is that police hate their responsibilities in regulating traffic. They hate responding to crash scenes. They hate writing traffic tickets. They don't think that they should be involved in the business of traffic enforcement. They want to, you hear from them so often, catch bad guys. And in their mind, somebody who injures or kills someone else with a car, they're really not a bad guy of the sort that the cops became cops to catch. The cops look at drivers who hit people as, it could be them. Because so many cops really live in their cars. They come from communities where you drive everywhere. They're not out on foot patrol in New York City generally. They're, in police cars, and they don't like to be on foot. And they don't understand and are frustrated by how many people are out on foot in New York City and on bike. And it frustrates them because the cyclists and the pedestrians in New York City, since time out of mind, going back 100 years, 200 years, however far back you go, I am sure that the pedestrian and cyclist culture was one of not following traffic laws and rules. And in order to have, a city where motor vehicle traffic can move smoothly, you have to force the cyclists and the pedestrians to follow a whole bunch of traffic rules and basically get out of the roadway for the benefit of the motorists. And this was a huge revolution in how our public space was managed when it was introduced in the 1920s. And, supposedly it was for the good because everyone wanted to, drive in their cars. But we realize now, 100 years later, it was not for the good. Sure, cars have their use outside of the city, but in a city like this, they're of limited use. They're bulls in a china shop. And the cops who are tasked with enforcing the traffic laws so that motor vehicle traffic can move smoothly are really in the business of trying to rub out the New York City street culture and the New York City traffic culture that's existed for centuries here. So what I learned in the context of discovery against the NYPD is that cops are not required to get any special training in traffic unless they're assigned to a specialized traffic unit, which is very few of them. The vast majority of the tens of thousands of cops who police New York City streets have just a driver's license. And that's all they're required to learn about the traffic laws and about how to harmonize the various traffic modes in New York City. All you need is a driver's license. And most of these police have never read the laws that apply to pedestrians and cyclists. They only know what the average driver knows. we asked from the NYPD that they produce to us all training materials from the police academy with respect to bicycles in the context of that critical mass litigation. And what they gave us was a single page that talked about how gangs and drug dealers use cyclists as lookouts and couriers to commit their crimes, and that police should therefore be picking people up for bicycle violations like riding on the sidewalk or riding counter flow, because it will lead to discovery of greater and more serious crimes. That's the sum total of what police were taught at the police academy from time out of mind. I mean, maybe it's changed since, 2004, 5, 6, when we were first looking at these documents. But that's kind of mind-blowing when you consider what a big part of policing traffic law is. So the other incredible thing we learned is that following the September 11th attacks in New York City, there was this huge infusion of cash for anti-terror purposes. And it was given to the police department. They developed these counterterrorism task forces. And the question was, how were we going to train the police to use all of this counter-terror technology? Surveillance technology, big giant machines that you'd use to shut down city blocks, all kinds of policing technology. And the answer came to them following the 2004 Republican National Convention, which was shut down by group cyclists participating in critical mass. They said, okay, if we're going to crush critical mass, we're going to take all of this anti-terror equipment and dollars and programs and focus it on critical mass. And it became a training ground for police to use helicopters with heat sensors, night vision, body cameras, all of this crazy high-tech anti-terror equipment being used against families on bicycles who just wanted to go out for a safe ride around the city once a month. I got, through discovery, videotapes showing my friends who did something called the Moonlight Ride in Central Park through a group called Time's Up, because, that was one of the groups that the police wanted to target in trying to crush and shut down critical mass. So they sent in undercover cops wearing body cameras to infiltrate and try to incite illegal behavior amongst the cyclists that they could then point to as a justification for how they were trying to crush that movement. So through the prism of this litigation over whether, a city can constitutionally require any 10 people moving about in public space to get advance permission from the police, in the context of that litigation, we found out that there, in this modern era, are all kinds of very dangerous technologies that can be brought to bear, and the constitutional rights are just thrown to the wind, by police who are more interested in trying to try out their new toys and trying to fulfill this mission of crushing group cycling. Who's going to stand up for cyclists? Well, I felt the call then, and I've been responding to it ever since. But when I look at police and I interact with them, I keep in my mind that awareness that police don't really understand traffic or traffic laws except beyond what you'd expect from just the average driver you'd come across on the street. And for a lot of people, that's a huge eye-opener. I know it was for me.